Today, we're lucky enough to have with us Derek Yoo, who's the CEO of Purestake. His team is responsible for the Moonriver Parachain auction that was a runaway hit, and they're also bidding on the upcoming Polkadot slot with their project Moonbeam and their Glimmer token. So we had a really great conversation today to talk about what happened before and what we have to look forward to in the future. Well, today we have with us Derek Yoo again for the third time, CEO of Purestake. His team's been working hard on Moonbeam for the Polkadot network, which is currently going through a Parachain auction right now. And previously, they're known for Moonriver, which is the Kusama Parachain that they launched. Welcome back to the show, Derek.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I kind of always like coming back on.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that we're already getting to the point where we've got like an alma mater of folks, people coming back to the show. But considering the success that you and your team have seen since you launched your Parachain, I mean, it's pretty awesome to have you guys back. And for people who maybe aren't, they've been sleeping under a rock somewhere in terms of Polkadot and Kusama, Moonriver has been one of the breakout successes, I think, for sure. Moonriver is the one that really kind of took everything by storm. I think people really opened their eyes after that big win. So since then, how has the ride been?
Yeah, I mean,
tell us about it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of the, so it's been so Moonriver has been like fully live and kind of operational for just about 10 weeks or so now, maybe 9-10 weeks, something like this, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't. That seems like shorter because like a lot has happened in that like last like 2.5 months. I mean, there's just been a lot of activity, so it feels like it's been longer than that, but it really has only been about 2.5 months. And so, what have we seen? I mean, there's been just a lot of organic deployment activity that we've seen, and yeah, I mean, to give folks some sense, I mean, I looked earlier today just to get some stats that I'd be able to share. But, right now on Moonriver, we're kind of approaching about 5 million transactions that have happened in the last, 10 weeks or so, with like, transaction counts standing somewhere around like 200K transactions per day at this point, which is quite a lot. I mean, I think there's chains that have been, running for a long time that like don't have like that level of activity. And then I looked at like on DeFi Llama, like it's for in terms of DeFi TVL, there's about a little over 350 million. That puts it at like number 20 of all chains basically like that exist. So I mean, I would say that definitely some surprises there, relative to what we thought. I think before we launched it, the reception and kind of the interest has been been great basically.
What do you think resonated with people so well against like some of these other parachains that have been launching? I mean, it just seems like for some reason your chain has gotten so much more attention, I think, than a lot of your kind of compatriots.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's probably like not like any one kind of single reason, but I would highlight a few things. One is that I think that the kind of the product strategy that we had around, focusing on this like Ethereum compatibility, as like a primary thing, that seems to have worked basically, right? So the whole idea, just to remind, folks listening, was that, that's kind of one of our primary kind of design goals and the feature sets was to create, as kind of compatible an environment as we could to existing Ethereum, right? So that existing dApps, existing tools, like anyone developer coming from an Ethereum background would just feel like right at home. And that's not just the core feature set, but it's also all of the surrounding kind of tools and integrations you need. So things like, Gnosis multisig, the graph, like, oracles, like, band and Chainlink. And so all these things that people like are used to, we went to some pretty great lengths to make sure that they were present. Etherscan, like, for example, we launched that was like one of the top requested things. It doesn't matter what Explorer you have, they're going to request Etherscan basically, like over and over again. So I think it's that, like the product itself. I think we, had spent a lot of time just making sure that it was ready to be used, right? It wasn't, that it was kind of ready for deployments. But, the other factors I'd cite are that, I think that the crowd loan itself and kind of the token distribution mechanism, was kind of a novel experiment as well that seems to have worked, right? The kind of idea there was let's really emphasize the community in terms of the token distribution, and that would kind of engage people and get people supporting the project. That kind of happened, I think, right? So there was a lot of people that then became very enthusiastic supporters. The community's grown a lot, I would say, since before we launched Moonriver.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, people have been really fascinated with like the price and everything of the different tokens launching. But I think one thing that we haven't really heard a lot of people paying attention to is it's just the fact that like it worked. Like the tokens just got distributed. There, people are using them, and there's no like issues there. But I do want to ask you, I mean, the last time we spoke, you had just won. And so I think that was kind of still like, it was just very new. But since then, I know you guys have done a lot of testing probably on the test nets and stuff. But like, what did you see when you actually got it live on Kusama? Like, were there any issues that you guys found that was like unexpected that you didn't see when you were doing this all on the test net?
Sure. I mean, there were some surprises. I mean, I think at one point, like on Moonriver, like block production stalled for 10 hours or something, or 8 hours. So like we definitely had like some bumps in the road. They were all recoverable, but that is something that obviously all those learnings, now, I mean, Kusama kind of has this purpose in a way of being the place where you can try all these things first. And I'll tell you that we go into, this Moonbeam kind of launch sequence with a lot more confidence, right? Having kind of gone through the whole thing, right? So last time, I think for everyone, it was a little bit of not just being the first time, but not all the pieces were even done yet. So it was kind of just in time development was happening. We were kind of doing the thing this week that was going to be deployed next week. So, it kind of felt a little bit, it was definitely like you kind of had to hang on a little bit like last time. This time, is a much more measured thing because we have all the pieces. We kind of have the experience of having gone through it once. I think we come at this like with a much higher degree of confidence. In fact, we're going to, the deployment time will be shortened quite a bit. Last time it was kind of 2 months from the time we won the auction until we actually did the full launch of the network. And we think we can improve upon that substantially this time around. So we have all the pieces ready.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I mean, I think the projects tend to take the right amount of time that they feel is necessary to get to transferability and like kind of launch. And it's kind of all over the map. I mean, I don't think it's been extremely consistent. And obviously, probably different projects have different requirements. But that's great to know that you actually think you could probably expedite that timeline. I think people will be really excited to hear that. So what, I know you listed off a bunch of different projects that have kind of like ported themselves over to Moonriver, and with the EVM compatibility and stuff, that makes it pretty straightforward and simple. But are there any things that popped up on your network that kind of surprised you, or that you're like extra delighted about, or really feels promising to you?
There's been surprises, I'd say. So to give context, right? I think leading up to the Moonriver launch, we were not only working quite a bit on like the technical implementation, but also on identifying some initial like ecosystem, projects that we'd be deploying. And so we've been working on that even for I'd almost say a full year before like the Moonriver launch happened. I would say that largely the projects that we got like traction with in that process were project teams that were established projects that were pursuing this like multi-chain deployment strategy, right? So a good example would be our partner Sushi, right? So Sushi is on, I don't know, 10 plus chains. They're in many places now. And, so they want to be anywhere where there's significant activity. And they said, okay, well, Polkadot's like a significant ecosystem. We want to be there. Oh, and given that we have this Ethereum, tech like implementation, probably makes sense to work with Moonbeam because then we don't have to build using Substrate. We can kind of take the same technology we have and deploy it there. Yet we still kind of get access to the Polkadot ecosystem. So that I'd say that was a lot of the project collaborations were of that nature. With these established teams. I think what's happened and what was a bit surprising in a good way is that once we launched Moonriver, there was a lot of organic activity. So for every project we had spoken with that we were kind of hand holding and supporting, there was project teams that just we'd never spoken with before that permissionless platform, they were just deploying, right? They saw an opportunity to deploy. So that's both in the DeFi sector as well as I'd say a lot of NFT projects. So like a lot of kind of organic NFT projects. So that actually I'm pretty encouraged by, right? Because it's one thing when you're bootstrapping an ecosystem, you're like, okay, I gotta maybe help things along a little bit here, but we already see like right out the gate there was people deploying and kind of looking to occupy key spots in the ecosystem. So I'm quite encouraged by that. We expect the same thing on Moonbeam. But the second thing that I think is important is that there's kind of a shift that I see happening where now a lot of the new teams that we're engaging with are actually what I call more Moonbeam or Polkadot native teams. So they don't necessarily have this like I'm going to be on 10 different chain strategy. Yeah. They're like, no, we're making a bet on the Polkadot ecosystem. We want to build there. And then for teams like that, I think they have this choice, right? Either you can use Substrate to build a Parachain, or you can deploy onto an existing Parachain. And so I think we're actually the net beneficiary of a lot of people in that second camp where they might say, you know what, like we're betting on Polkadot, but Parachain is not really doesn't necessarily make sense for us. We'd rather work with an existing team because these Parachains they're quite like they're pretty infrastructural, right? It's like a whole blockchain, so you got to deal with like lower level things. And I think for a lot of these teams are like, you know what, we just want to focus on specialize just in the protocol we're trying to build ourselves and like the end user experience. And then we'd rather almost like outsource like the lower level stuff to like someone else. So that's, in this case, us. And so we're seeing much more of that of these like what I call native teams that are, making a bet not only on Polkadot, but on us, which we obviously appreciate. I think that's, there's much more of that's coming in terms of folks that are either in the process of deploying now or that will be deploying soon.
Yeah, you must be reading my mind because I was going to just go right there and say, the success of Parachains has been pretty obvious, but at the same time, people are it still seems like ETH is just getting even stronger and stronger in parallel to this. And I just wonder, does the future lie where, a lot of that is just kind of like duplicating itself onto some of these other chains, like Moonbeam and Moonriver, or do you really feel like Moonriver and Moonbeam will kind of create their own identity at some point and kind of like splinter off and just become this completely separate thing, not so tethered to the kind of EVM world?
Yeah.
It sounds like there's already teams forming around that kind of concept.
Yeah, I think that, well, on this EVM thing, I mean, I do think that is a thing that's here to stay, right? So I think when you're just a team, forget about the chain. If you're just a team looking to start to build something, I think it's almost at this point, it's kind of no one ever got fired for whatever used to be choosing IBM in the past. Like now it's like no one ever got fired for choosing like, the EVM to implement in because you have this optionality, right? You can actually move like, if you can go one place, if you need to expand, you can use the same tech, you can, relocate. So there's a bunch of options you have versus, kind of going all in like, with like, a particular like chains like tech. So I do think that's, one element here. But, what I'd highlight is that, yeah, even for us, right? I mean, so yes, we've gone to great lengths to create this EVM compatible environment, but there's a bunch of those, right? So the question is, what is it that makes Moonbeam or Moonriver unique in the context of there being these many different like EVM compatible destinations? And this is kind of speaking a little bit to where we're going to putting our energy now in some of our roadmap. Is that there's really unique use cases that are enabled because like we are a parachain on Polkadot, right? So being a parachain on Polkadot means that we have this like native interoperability that with the other parachains. And so that's something that, other like standalone EVM chains don't have. And so, give you an example, what I mean by this, for example, like one of the collaborations we have is with the team at Lido. Lido is a prominent like a protocol on Ethereum as well as some other networks at this point. They specialize in making liquid staking derivatives. I think they're the largest of the protocols doing this on Ethereum for its ETH2 staking right now.
Yeah, they're the only one staking more ETH than we are at Kraken. So yeah,
there you go.
Very familiar with
You're familiar with them. So they're looking to create a similar product for DOT, right? So they want to create a like liquid staked DOT. And so here's how it's going to work. So basically, they're going to deploy their DApp onto Moonbeam, right? So they can use all the same tools they're familiar with to create like an end user experience, and the protocol logic itself will live as smart contracts on Moonbeam. But then, we've created a series of like these special precompiles. So basically these functions that leverage the underlying kind of Polkadot native networking. And basically, so what they'll be able to do from their dApp is they can kind of remote control staking operations like on the relay chain, on the Polkadot relay chain from their dApp that's on Moonbeam. And so this is pretty interesting to me, right? So this is kind of an example of, you kind of have, it's multi-chain, right? So you're kind of using like our chain for like what it's specialized in, this Ethereum like environment. You're kind of also performing actions on this like specialized relay chain, the staking functions that are kind of specialized there. But you get this kind of whole is greater than some of its parts, right? So your kind of app is like living on two chains, but you're kind of able to provide like one user experience. And so I think that's kind of like a very interesting scenario for me, that this kind of like multi-chain scenario is something that, I feel that we're going to be uniquely positioned to help deliver because we're part of, because we're a Parachain on Polkadot.
Yeah, it kind of almost feels like when, applications started kind of like becoming like architectures instead, right? Like it wasn't just like all one item. Now we have like, it's like the database server, and you have the app server and the browser. It's like all these things are starting to kind of create this composability and interoperability between all of them. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, I totally agree that like, I think almost all dApps that exist today were created with, kind of a single chain or a mono chain deployment in mind, right? They're like, I'm going to just deploy the entirety of myself onto like one chain. It's almost like, saying I'm going to put my software on one computer. But, I think we're entering into this multi-chain world where there's different chains are good at different things, right? You even see it already with things like, some of these NFTs, right? You have the NFT kind of ownership, like, the actual contract would be as a, like let's say in ERC 721, but then the metadata might live on something like Arweave, right? Something that's specialized for storage, basically, to store these like larger pieces of data. So I definitely see this as kind of the direction things are going to move. And I think there's actually a big opportunity. Almost everything that exists today is going to have to get reimagined as like what it looks like in like a multi-chain environment, right? What does it look like, if I could use specialized functionality from different chains, like the database server and file server from your example. And I think we're just at the very beginning of that. So that's where I feel that, Moonbeam can play an important role in being a place where you can access a lot of these different specialized functions.
Yeah, definitely. I can already see the LinkedIn titles changing. Full stack, full protocol, interoperable engineer, Web3 engineer. It's coming, I'm sure. Yeah, it's a really exciting time. And I being old enough to have seen like web apps kind of evolve from like the Web 1.0 to the Web 2.0 and now 3. And I'm sure there'll be like some Web 4 initiative at some point. But yeah, you guys are like right at the forefront. It must be really exciting to be building like kind of the underlying infrastructure for all of that. And one of the cool things about Polkadot too is I think that there is just like this innate desire to work with other projects more so than I see on like some of these other platforms. And then also, just back to like the EVM piece. I mean, I've talked to like tons of developers just, through my work at Kraken and, that are building on Solana or other platforms. And, learning a whole new platform is just, it's difficult, even if you're just building tools that nearly scrape the blockchain or whatever, interact with the APIs. It's very difficult. And so, with Solidity being such a Swiss, army knife of a blockchain development platform, it's really, it just streamlines what getting, traction for you guys.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, there's an old mentor of mine that like you used to always like emphasize to me that like, your customer is lazy, basically, right? Like developers especially are like are lazy people. And like, I mean that in a good way. And so what that means is that, look for every opportunity you can to reduce the friction, right? Like learning a new tech stack, that's friction. Having a different block explorer, that's friction. So I think that's informed, some of our product strategy, but also the things surrounding it, right? So like a lot of the, developer materials and other integrations we pursue and other things is like, we just want to create like the lowest friction environment that we can. And, almost like like the traction follows it, right? If you're just kind of the least, have the least friction, you're just going to get like, more users basically than folks where there are more steps involved.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'd like to shift over maybe and talk a little bit about what's going on right now. We kind of, focused on Kusama and how things have been going there, but you're actually currently right in the middle of a crowd loan in preparation for the upcoming Polkadot auctions, which start on Thursday, I believe. And just glancing over at the Polkadot JS charts, 5.5. Actually, it just jumped up. It's like just recently, it's like 5.65 million DOT have been contributed to your crowd loan. in just a few days. It's incredible. How has the reception been on your side?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, I think like I said, I think the community around the project has grown a lot since the when we last spoke around the Kusama crowdloan. So we go into the Polkadot crowdloans just with a much larger community, and I think ultimately these crowdloans, just to digress on that for a moment. I mean, they ultimately are an expression of like your community's support, and I do think it's a very clever mechanism that the folks at Parity and Web3 came up with, where it's basically a way to allow kind of the projects with the strongest community support to occupy this like scarce resource, like these slots of which there's only like a finite like number of them. And I think it's while it's challenging as a team, because that means we have to do these things to kind of get enough support to get in, and then it's not even that's not even the end of the story, right? Because then like it's only for some finite amount of time, and then you got to kind of do it again. You got to reprove yourself, right? But I do think that it has this function of like curation, right? So like it curates basically so that like the resources go to like the teams that will create the largest amount of value for the network, and it's an ongoing thing, right? You can't just get in and rest on your laurels, and it's like no, you have to continue to demonstrate your value so that you'll like be able to renew again. So as challenging as that might make it for the team, I do think it's correct in a way, right? So it's like a correct way to allocate these like scarce resources. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that like we want to try to provide like the most amount of value we can back to like the overarching like Polkadot network, and I think we can do that through. I see it kind of being this like this on ramp, right? This like almost way to like get new people like into the ecosystem. But guess what? Once they're on Moonbeam, then they're like, well, I'm curious. So how does Polkadot work, or like how do these other parachains work, or how do I use these like cross chain integrations? And I think it's almost like I see ourselves as a doorway, right, to getting people interested in these things.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like as an organization that's not really conducting a crowd loan ourselves, we kind of build, a service that facilitates, people to participate. We're always looking at the numbers pretty closely, and I've noticed a few interesting little details in how things are going this time around. Now, obviously, last set of auctions in Kusama, you guys got the second one, and Akala got the first slot. And just based on overall contributions, it looks like that's kind of where it's heading right now as well, similar. But the thing that I find very interesting is that you guys have nearly twice as many individual contributions as Akala. It's almost reverse. What do you make from that dynamic?
Yeah, we actually, I don't think we're finished yet, but we were taking some first stabs at like trying to analyze this data. It does appear that we have like, many kind of more smaller like contributors, like versus, some larger contributors on the Kala side. Now, I think it's probably a little bit too early to tell, because some people, I think other teams, I'm not sure in the case of Kala, there may have been some incentives to like go early or other things. So, we largely last time and this time didn't do any of those things. We just had a straight kind of thing. And so there may be some benefit to people waiting like until later, right? Like to kind of decide what to do. But, I do take it as like, this like large number of smaller contributors. I mean, that is an expression of this like community we talked about, right? That, it's, this year alone has grown like a lot. And since like the Moonriver crowd loan, it's grown a lot. So I think that's, we're actually pretty pleased with this, large number of smaller contributors, because those, I do think that those represent, like real people that are pledging their support for the project. And, those are the kinds of people we want to be involved, like, in our community.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. To that end, some of the other crowd loans we saw in the Kusama set, we noticed that there were a couple that had like pretty low amount of contributors, but like some massive whales getting involved. I'm assuming they're probably financial, investors or organizations. I mean, have you guys had much interaction and support from those type of institutions? Like, do you see more interest from an institutional level, especially in light of like how well you guys did in the Kusama auction?
I have spoken with a number of them, like as to what they'll do. I don't know, right? So sometimes it's a kind of a cards close to the chest kind of like discussion that happens. But I think I've been, as part of my job, right? I've just been trying to like, keep people updated on progress. I mean, I do think, as we were talking about before, we do have. I think the real strength that we have is just like kind of our reputation for execution, and then being able to point back to like actual proof points, like from Moonriver, and saying, hey, this is like, this is like what's going to happen like on Moonbeam, right? I mean, we kind of have these demonstrable proof points. As to like what the institutional, appetite will be, that remains to be seen. We did not like engage in any kind of like special special like arrangements or anything, right? Or the Moonbeam Foundation did not. So that's it's just kind of it is what it is basically.
Yeah. Another question around this, like I remember having several conversations with different teams, as the auctions were proceeding, and there was a lot of discussion around the actual cap for the auction itself.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of saw this trend where people were like lowering the cap a little bit, like they were like being a little bit like they were limiting it. And I think some of the explanation was like, well, this is not an indication of the worth of the network. It's like we're just trying to find enough support to win in a slot and move forward. But I'm noticing that in these ones now, the caps seem to be like fairly high. I mean, do you guys feel like, like you guys set your cap at what, 100 million, I think is the number, and that's like a pretty ambitious number. I'm assuming that's just kind of a high ceiling, hope, likely not to be hit. But how did you guys shift your frame of thinking there, in terms of like where you were going to set that cap?
It is just as you say. Like, my preference would be like that the system would work without specifying a cap at all. Like, so that was what we wanted. So in that, since that's not technically possible, we just had to come up with a number that we thought like could never ever be reached, and like so it would effectively be uncapped. And so that's kind of why we chose that. In fact, it's the same. It's on a relative basis, it's the same number we chose for our Moonriver crowd loan. So it was set to like 10% of the network in that case, and the same thing like here, basically, at least of the Genesis like amount. So basically the idea is like we did not want people to like draw some conclusions of we expect this or this, start computing like like what the rewards will be. I mean, that's not like the goal here. It's just to leave it uncapped. And the thing I think some people don't appreciate is, I mean, I think there is a world in which ideally you could set one, but the problem is as a Parachain team, you're in this kind of game theoretic situation with all the other Parachain teams. So let's say I think we were one of the first people to launch a crowd loan. Let's just say that we said, okay, let's set the cap to to let's call it like a 2%, like a network. That would be what would that be, like 20 million, right? So let's set it to that. I mean, the problem, or 1% or 10 million, let's say. And the problem if we come out first and do that is that like all the other teams could set it to, they could like prices right us, right? They could be like 20 million and one, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And then we could by choosing the wrong cap, we could like leave ourselves in a situation where we get locked out of like all the first 5 slots. So I think that's the challenge with this. And so that's why like we just felt that there was no good way to set like a cap but still not jeopardize like our ability to get like one of the first slots, because we just don't know what the support is gonna look like. I mean, we have the Kusama data to look at, but that may not be totally that may not be all the right assumptions to then apply onto Polkadot. As you said, there's a lot of institutions and other people here, so we just don't know. So that's why we went with the kind of the effectively like uncapped kind of approach. And then we'll just see. I think people will kind of have to, kind of assess whether it makes sense to go in or not, right? Based on, kind of the situation.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned some like how like Akala, for instance, had offered maybe some incentives that encourage people to participate earlier. In the last round of auctions on Kusama, we saw a couple surprises, like people that won where everybody was like, what? But that's the nature of the candle auction. Do you think that has like changed any of your perception around how you like try to encourage people to participate, or do you just feel like it's inevitable? You guys are going to probably get a slot and that pressure is not really there, or do you guys not even think about that?
I would say it looks like most teams are pursuing some form of like additional like marketing tactics like on top of the crowd loan. So that could take the form of early bird bonus or refer a friend or other things. And I think we just decided that to not do any of those things, and just have like a straightforward kind of offer, and then kind of try to keep it simple, basically. I think that the simpler you can keep it, I mean, it just leads to like a lot of questions and this is like one of the big things where, we're trying to support like a larger, community now. And we just felt that keeping it simple would would be fine. Basically, like we'll still kind of achieve our goals, and it'll lessen any kind of questions and support burden and implementation complexity and like other things.
Yeah, speaking of simple and trying to keep things, manageable, I'm sure you had what you felt was like the appropriate size team to do the Kusama parachain, but now you're moving towards Moonbeam as well. I mean, how has the team and the project scaled since then? Have you guys been growing significantly, or?
Yeah, so we have grown. I would say that, let's see, right now I think we're 36. We're going to be 37 people soon. So, for a crypto project, maybe that's medium size. I don't think that's small anymore. But we will be growing further. So I think that's clear. We're pretty picky about like, the hiring. In fact, I'm highly involved in the hiring process and the recruitment process myself. This is something, yeah, just based on previous experience, this is, probably one of the most important things that you do as an organization. So, we tend to be, pretty deliberate about that, take our time, to make sure we find the right people. I think that's, frankly, when people ask, how we've been able to be successful, I attribute a lot of it to that, basically, this kind of, just having a great team and, taking like a lot of care in the hiring process.
Yeah, I think one interesting dynamic around hiring, I think just overall in the space, at least from my experience at Kraken as well, is like I've noticed that, several years back, it seemed like you would get people that were really passionate about crypto, knew a lot about crypto, but were kind of immature because it's kind of a niche area. And now I'm starting to see like tons of people that are walking away from like really great jobs at like, not Kraken, Google, Facebook, Amazon, places like that, Apple, and they're like, I just want to be in crypto, and they're bringing like these like really amazing skill sets. Have you been finding it difficult to find good hires, or have you just been like overwhelmed with talent, or is it still really challenging to find good people?
No, it's always challenging to find good people because you're always competing against like other hiring
Yeah.
organizations for them. I think just a couple of comments I'd make on this is that this is something that has come over time, and certainly did not start this way in my career. But the actual technical skills or knowledge is like less important to me than other kinds of attributes. Like at this point, right? I mean, I want to see kind of curiosity, like energy, culture fit, like these kinds of things are more important to me, because you can learn the former, but it's like very hard to change like some of these other traits, let's call it. So that's something that is a big part of our hiring process, is to make sure that like those things are going to work, because that's really important to like the team. On this, your observation about crypto people versus non-crypto people, I'd say almost all of the team we have are like non-crypto people, like not all, but like
Yeah.
many. And yeah, I think that, well, for one, like, some of these discussions you have with crypto people, the expectations of like, kind of what, they want from a comp perspective is like, it's just crazy,
they're,
basically.
they're experts. They're SMEs now. They're subject matter
That's right.
experts.
So,
So
I mean, that's not the most important thing, but that's something. But
yeah,
yeah, I would say that, again, is looking for these, less about like what because you can learn, like people will learn that have the right like curiosity and the right like energy and wherewithal. So yeah, I would tend to, kind of hire a lot of people that want to come in. And I would agree with you at this point. There's, a lot of people that are interested in coming into the space, which is great. I mean, I am seeing like, very highly credentialed people that, just great candidates basically coming in.
yeah, I know it's kind of like when everybody had to have, everybody had their own website, back in the day, and now it's like I have an NFT that I minted, or it's like
Mhm.
so I guess it's a badge of honor, and it's a sign that the industry is maturing quite a bit. Probably positive, I guess, overall net.
Mhm.
um, so I one thing that has changed a lot, and something that has like been very we've been very keen to see happen here, or we're curious like how this would affect the overall space for Polkadot, is some of the other bigger players are getting now into the auctions. We have Binance shows up,
Mhm.
the behemoth in the room. How has this impacted kind of like any of your work? I mean, I know we've collaborated a little bit in terms of like making sure that you guys were you know that we integrated everything properly and stuff, but now you have others that are interested in this. Has it made your life harder to like deal with all these different groups, or still manageable?
Yeah, I would say that, well, on the one hand, there's more people around, so that always increases the work. On the other hand, back to some of the points we were talking about earlier, we had this experience of having gone through it once. We had like much more time this time around. So I feel that, we're in a more organized like place like this time around. So I would say that it's been fine. And yeah, obviously having like more people at the table. I mean, I think it's a benefit to everyone. Basically, it just means that that there's more attention like on the ecosystem. There's more attention like on the projects. There's more the ecosystem as a whole is just has made progress in terms of mindshare. So I see these as kind of positive, positive things.
One of the things that we noticed is we got a ton of feedback from people who were very upset that they didn't get to get into Moonriver after you guys delivered the token, and the price guide kind of got established, and everybody felt like they kind of missed out. Did you find that there was a much higher level of like FOMO on this next kind of round, that like people are, do you just feel like your community is like more like frothing at the mouth, to get in as a part of this crowd loan than the last time, or you just kind of see like this consistent interest levels?
Yeah, it's been more consistent. I mean, obviously, I don't think that some of the things that have happened on Moonriver, as I've said, are obviously going to like be factored in and help us. So I think those are all good things. We did do something. So, for example, the Moonbeam Foundation ran like this like community oriented kind of sale event like about a couple of months ago now, like 6 weeks ago. And one of the priority groups of people that like were that were prioritized for that were people that contributed to the Moonriver crowd loan. So we were kind of making efforts to kind of pull people along, right? Like in like from that were already previous supporters of ours, and we'll see on the on the FOMO side. Like yeah, it's hard to tell, right? But I do think it seems like all of these Polkadot like parachains and auctions are just the mind share has increased a lot, as I said. So we're looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And then speaking of looking forward, I mean, what do we have to look forward to over the next few months from you guys as observers and participants, and not a part of the internal team? Like, are there any surprises you can share with us, or just give us some a taste of what's to come?
Yeah, I think that well, in terms I mentioned that in terms of the actual kind of launch sequence, assuming we win one of the first 5 slots here, and we do have we just come into this like with quite a bit of confidence, so we do think that we will have a full launch of the network, much faster than was the case with Moonriver. Moonriver was 2 months. I mean, this should be shorter than that, half that, like perhaps. So that's like one thing to look forward to. And I'd say that in terms of features, the thing that I'm most interested in are shipping, these like cross-chain integration features. So if you look at our roadmap, a lot of it's going to shift to that area. And as I was mentioning before, we see this as kind of the way that we're different, or the unique differentiator relative to other EVM chains. So we want to really make good on that and start really driving home the value of having this, kind of built-in networking that doesn't make any additional trust assumptions that is possible on Polkadot. And so, we're shipping the first of those to Moonriver quite soon here. And then, we have a lot more planned, right? So basically like, almost all of the other Parachain teams that are with us, we want to do integrations with them. Tokens is an obvious first step, but then, these more functional integrations, like I was describing in that Lido use case, we want to start to explore those. And I do think that some of this will require some different style thinking, right? Because you have, when you're in the context of the EVM, everything happens, synchronously, right? You can do these flash loans and these other things, but once you move to like a multi-chain environment, some of those things are different, right? So you're going to dispatch calls out to another parachain. You may not get the answer until later, basically. So this will require some like rethinking of like what the programming models look like. So I do think there is, interesting work to be done there. And that's the kind of stuff that we plan on working on.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's going to be some interesting challenges coming forward. I mean, one thing that I found is starting to kind of happen naturally is, especially with Polkadot's lockup period being longer than Kusama, and quite a long time at 2 years, I guess, if you go for the full thing. we're starting to see this phenomenon around like people creating like liquid tokens in order to, get people to be able to still use those tokens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think that, the impact to having this many coins locked up on the network is going to be overall for the ecosystem? Or do you think we're just going to keep coming up with clever ways to kind of work around that?
Well, I think that the whole crowdloan mechanism and the fact that these tokens get locked was surely like a very intentional part of the design of Polkadot itself when it comes to like its token economics, right? So I don't know. I've never spoken specifically on this point with Gab or others, but I'm sure that it was quite intentional as kind of I've heard of it referred to as a velocity sink, right? So you kind of in your token design, if you have staking or other features that will basically like tie up tokens, and that like that's can be an intentional thing to like improve the what happens to like the tokens that are floating. So yeah, I'm sure that that's an intentional part of the design, is to have usage of the network lead to like lockups of like these tokens. Now, I do think though that we've seen a ton of interest in these. Anything that's locked, I feel like people are working on a protocol to kind of give you like a liquid derivative. So like that's staking, that's in the crowd loans. This is like what the people want. So, and generally in the design of these decentralized systems, you can't stop it basically. And so I have heard that there is like this set of trade-offs where I think some of the designers of the system, they don't like it because it kind of puts the protocol provider providing the liquid like derivative then becomes a little bit of a power player in control of like where some of the resources are going, right? So an example of staking, they get to like choose like where the delegations go for staking, for example. So it's a little bit fraught, but I do think it's like basically like not possible to kind of prevent this from happening in like a permissionless system. So that's I think that's kind of the trend of the day, isn't it? It's kind of like taking staking derivatives, creating derivatives that then can be kind of you can fold like multiple times, like to like multiply like effects. So that's kind of like what DeFi is happening. What's happening in DeFi these days, I feel like in general.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like people build these big steel walls and we just walk around them. It's like they find a way around it. But that's the nature of open source software always. And, especially the decentralized space, there's always somebody working on something crazy. So I really appreciate you stopping in today to talk with us again about the upcoming Moonbeam auction, and really excited to see what happens with that and the Glimmer token. And is there anywhere we can send people out to learn more about what the team's working on and get updates?
Yeah, we obviously have like the Moonbeam.network website, but really probably the primary thing that I might suggest people do that are interested in really engaging kind of into the community would be our Discord. That is kind of I'd call it the heart of like the community. And as I was mentioning, it's grown quite a bit. I think we have our community has a reputation for being quite like accessible and like friendly, and even for people that aren't technical people or they might not know that much about Polkadot or other things, we're pretty helpful folks like there to help people get up to speed, or if you're having issues. So that's kind of what I would suggest, is that's a great way to engage. And then we have this ambassador program and other things that have there's quite a significant number of folks that have been engaging with us in that way. And so that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, Discord seems to be the place to go. I know they were out there teasing us on Twitter with the MetaMask button on their Discord snap screenshot, but we'll see if that happens. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and really great conversation. And hopefully, we'll be able to have you back again soon.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'll be glad to come back for an update like later, or maybe when we get the Parachain renewals, right? Like on Moonriver or something. So that'll be a whole different process, right? To work through what the renewals look like. So
yeah, don't remind me. Yes, definitely. We'll definitely have to do that. Thanks again to our guest, Derek. It was great learning more about your Polkadot project, Moonbeam. Make sure you like, subscribe, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And we'll be sure to bring you along as we get a backstage pass to the world of Parachain auctions. Until next time, I'm Brian Hoffman, and this has been the Parachain Auctions Podcast. This content is not financial or investment advice. All interviews and discussions are opinions only. Kraken does not endorse the accuracy of this content. None of the following information should be construed as a recommendation to support any specific Parachain project or to participate in Parachain auctions in general. See our terms of service for more information.